Truckers, Part 9, Chapter 4. From the Book of Nome, Goods Inwards, verses 1 to 4. 1. Woe unto you, ironmongery and haberdashery! Woe unto you, millinery and delicatessen! Woe unto you, young fashions, and unto you, you bandits of corsetry, and even unto you, stationery. Number 2. For the store is but a place inside the outside. 3. Woe unto you, for Arnold Brothers, established 1905, has opened the last sale. Everything must go. Number 4. But they mocked him and said, you are an outsider. You don't even exist. Overhead, the humans plodded through their slow and incomprehensible lives. Below, so that the din was muffled by carpet and floorboards into a distant rumbling, the gnomes straggled hurriedly along their dusty passageways. "It couldn't have meant it," said Granny Morky. "This place is too big. A place as big as this can't be destroyed. Stands to reason." "I told you, didn't I?" panted Torret, who always cheered up immensely at any news of devastation and terror. "They always said the thing knows things, and don't you go telling me to shut up, you." "Why do we have to run?" said Masklin. "I mean, 21 days is a long time." "Not in politics," said Dorcas grimly. "I thought this was the store." Dorcas stopped so suddenly that Granny Morky cannoned into the back of him. "Look," he said with impatient patience. "What do you think gnomes should do, if the store is destroyed?" "Go outside of," Masklin began. "But most of them don't even believe the outside really exists," Dorcas said. "Even I'm not quite sure about it, and I have an extremely intelligent and questioning mind. There isn't anywhere to go. Do you understand me?" "There's masses of outside," said Masklin. "Only if you believe in it." "No," Masklin continued, "it is really there." "I'm afraid," said Dorcas, "people are more complicated than you think. But we ought to see the abbot anyway. Dreadful old tyrant, of course, but quite bright in his way. It's just a rather stuffy way." He looked hard at them. "Possibly best if we don't draw attention to ourselves," he added. "People tend to leave me alone, but it's not a wise thing for people to wander around outside their department without good reason, and since you haven't got a department at all—" He shrugged. He managed, in one shift of his shoulders, to hint at all the unpleasant things that could happen to departmentless wanderers. It meant using the lift again. It led into a dusty underfloor area, dimly lit by well-spaced weak bulbs. No one seemed to be around. After the bustle of the other departments, it was almost unpleasantly quiet. Even quieter, Masklin thought, than the big fields. After all, fields were meant to be quiet. The underfloor spaces should have gnomes in. They all sensed it. They drew closer to one another. "What dear little lights," said Grimmer to break the silence. "Gnome size. All different colours, look, and some of them flash on and off." "We steal boxes of them every year around Christmas fair," said Dorcas without looking around. "Humans put them on trees." "Why?" "Search me. To see 'em better, I suppose. You can never tell with humans," said Dorcas. "But you know what trees are, then," said Masklin. "I didn't think you'd have them in the store." "Of course I know," said Dorcas. "Big green things with plastic prickles on. Some of them are made of tinsel. You can't move for the things every Christmas fair, I told you." "The ones we have outside are huge," Masklin ventured, "and they have these leaves which fall off every year." Dorcas gave him an odd look. "What do you mean, fall off?" he said. "They just curl up and fall off," said Masklin. The other gnomes nodded. There were a lot of things lately they weren't certain about, but they were experts on what happened to leaves every year. "And this happens every year," said Dorcas. "Oh, yes." "Really?" said Dorcas. "Fascinating. And who sticks them back on?" "No one," said Masklin. They just turn up again, eventually. All by themselves? They nodded. When there's one thing you're certain of, you hang on to it. They seem to, said Masklin. We've never really found out why. It just happens. The store gnome scratched his head. Well, I don't know, he said uncertainly. It sounds like very sloppy management to me. Are you sure? There were suddenly figures surrounding them. 1 minute dust heaps, the next minute people. The one right in front of the party had a beard, a patch over one eye, and a knife clenched in his teeth. It somehow made his grin so much worse. Oh dear, said Dorcas. Who are they? Hissed Masklin. Bandits. That's always a problem in corsetry, said Dorcas, raising his hands. What's bandits? Said Masklin blankly. What's corsetry? Said Grimmer. Dorcas pointed a finger at the floorboards overhead. It's up there, he said. A department. Only no one's really interested in it because there's nothing in it of any use. It's mainly pink, he said. Sometimes the elastic... off, said the head bandit impatiently. Pardon? Said Grimmer. I heard... off. I think it's a knife, said Masklin. I think we'd understand you if you took the knife out. The bandit glared at him with his one good eye, but took the knife blade out of his mouth. I said your possessions or your life, he repeated. Masklin gave Dorcas a questioning look. The old gnome waved his hands. He wants you to give him everything you have, he said. He won't kill you, of course, but they can be rather unpleasant. The outside gnomes went into a huddle. This was something beyond their experience. The idea of stealing was a new one to them. Back home there had never been anyone to steal from. If it came to that, there had never been anything to steal. Don't they understand plain gnome? Said the bandit. Dorcas gave him a sheepish grin. You'll have to excuse them, he said. They're new here. Masklin turned around. We've decided, he said, if it's the same to you, we'll keep what we have. Sorry. He gave Dorcas and the bandit a bright smile. The bandit returned the smile. At least, he opened his mouth and showed a lot of teeth. Said Dorcas, you can't say that, you know. You can't say we don't want to be robbed. He saw Masklin's look of complete bewilderment. Robbed, he repeated. It means having your things taken away from you. You just can't say you don't want it to happen. Why not? Said Grimmer. Because... The old gnome hesitated. Well, I don't know, really. Tradition, I suppose. The bandit chief tossed his knife from one hand to the other. Tell you what I'll do, he said. You being new and everything will hardly hurt you at all. Get them! 2 bandits grabbed Granny Morky. This turned out to be a mistake. Her bony right hand flashed out and there were 2 ringing slaps. Cheek, she snapped, as a gnome staggered sideways, clutching their ears. A bandit who tried to hold old Torrit got a pointed elbow in his stomach. One waved a knife at Grimmer, who caught his wrist. The knife dropped from his hand and he sank to his knees, making pathetic, bubbling noises. Masklin leaned down, grabbed a handful of the chief's shirt in one hand, and lifted him up to eye level. I'm not sure we fully understand this custom, he said. But gnomes shouldn't hurt other gnomes. Don't you think? Ah ha 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 ha, said the chief nervously. So I think it would perhaps be a good idea if you go away, don't you? Masklin let go. The bandit scrabbled on the floor for his knife, gave Masklin another anxious grin, and ran for it. The rest of the band hurried after him, or at least limped fast. Masklin turned to Dorcas, who was shaking with laughter. Well, he said, what was all that about? Dorcas leaned against a wall for support. You really don't know, do you? He said. No, said Masklin patiently. That's why I asked, you see. The corsetry are bandits. They take things that don't belong to them. They hide out in corsetry because it's more trouble than it's worth for anyone to drag them out, said Dorcas. Usually they just Usually they just try to frighten people. They're really just a bit of a nuisance. Why'd that one have his knife in his mouth? Said Grimmer. It's supposed to make him look tough, I think. I think it makes him look silly, said Grimmer flatly. He'll feel the back of my hand if he comes back here, said Granny Morky. I don't think they'll be back. I think they were a bit shocked to have people hit them, in fact, said Dorcas. He laughed. You know, I'm really looking forward to seeing what effect you lot have on the abbot. I don't think we've ever seen anything like you. You'll be like a... what's that stuff you said there's a lot of outside? Fresh air, said Masculine. That's right, fresh air. And so they came, eventually, to the stationery.